Welcome to a new episode of the Sports Mecca podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Abramo. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Sam Hengeli. Today, we are joined by Danny Cunningham. Danny is the host of the Locked On Cavs podcast for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Danny, thank you so much for coming on the podcast tonight to discuss latest NBA news and Cleveland Cavs content.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Glad to be here and chat with you guys for a little bit. Super excited about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for this podcast, we'll break it down starting with what's been going on lately with the NBA. So, we'll get your thoughts on several free agent acquisitions, any of the offseason frenzy, and then we'll bring it back around to actually Cleveland Cavaliers content specifically. So, uh, just to start, there's been a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of news that's been going on the last couple of days. Now the free agency is going on. Started uh, before July 1st, and this was actually today the news of Milwaukee Bucks waiving Damian Lillard and then using that contract to sign Myles Turner, who is a free agent for 4 years, 107 million. What's your thoughts on that? If you want to call it a blockbuster or a very surprise move by Milwaukee.
I think surprise is certainly accurate and fair to say. I look at this and I think it is a desperate move by the Milwaukee Bucks. With they're not in a position now. Adding Miles Turner in a vacuum, I think is a good move. I think Miles Turner is a very talented player. The fact too that the Bucks were able to take him away from a rival in the Indiana Pacers and a team at the top of the East, I think a very good thing. But they're in a position right now where I don't think their roster as constituted, and this isn't to say that they're done with all the moving and shaking that they can do, although I don't think they have a move nearly as big as the ones they pulled off today. But I don't think their roster as constituted is one that is anywhere near a championship caliber roster. There's been so much conversation in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, really since the finals ended, and Tyrese Halliburton unfortunately went down with that torn Achilles tendon. There's been so much conversation about how the Eastern Conference is wide open, right? Like anybody could win the East. The Cavs could win the East. The Magic, the New York Knicks, the Detroit Pistons maybe can't win the East, but they're highly thought of. The Boston Celtics are not going to stink. They're not going to win the East, but the Atlanta Hawks are going for it, right? And the Bucks, I think, kind of saw this and said, well, the East is wide open and we have the best player in the East. And they do. Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think, is far and away the best player in the Eastern Conference. But the rest of that roster is just nowhere near being a contending type roster. I don't look at this move as one that elevates them from where they were last year, which was fifth place in the Eastern Conference. And that was with Damian Lillard, of course, who is, in my opinion, and I understand he's not going to play this year because of that torn Achilles that he had. But I look at this and say, okay, well, does this make them better than they were last year? Probably not. They're probably about the same caliber of team they were last year, but they were fifth in the East. And I think that there are some teams below them, primarily Orlando, that has certainly gotten better. Now, of course, you can make the case that the Celtics won't be as good and the Pacers won't be as good, but I kind of look at all those teams in the same group. And I think that this is a move that might not be the move ultimately the Bucks wish they would have made, because I do think that this will keep Giannis happy for now. And I know that Chris Haynes reported he's not happy about them waiving Damian Lillard, and I totally get that. But I'm not sure that this is the right move if you want to build a sustained winner around Giannis. This feels like a desperate Hail Mary, if you will, that just I don't think is going to work out the way that they think it might.
So, in addition to that, are you worried that next offseason or maybe at the deadline that we could see some hearings of Milwaukee wanting to move Giannis for just an absolute massive haul? Or is this uh really wanting them to keep Giannis for the long term?
So I don't think Milwaukee is ever going to want to move Giannis. They might be forced to move Giannis at some point, but I don't think that they're ever going to be like, you know what, we really just want to get rid of Giannis. So if you look at the history of their franchise, obviously they had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar way back in the day, and they ultimately traded him to the Los Angeles Lakers. And it wasn't essentially for another 50 years until Giannis showed up. And they had some good players in between there. Glenn Robinson, Michael Redd. Like they had some very good players in between that, but they never had a franchise player. They had a few good teams here and there, but they didn't have a franchise player. They never got back to the finals until Giannis showed up. And it's not as if Milwaukee is in a market that the next Giannis, and I'm not saying like somebody that is exactly Giannis, but the next star player isn't going to force his way to Milwaukee. That's not going to be a thing that happens because it is Milwaukee ultimately. The same way that other than LeBron James, a star player is not going to force his way to Cleveland. That's just not how it happens in these Midwestern small market cities. That's not what the NBA it does. So I think that no, unless Giannis says, guys, it has been a great run. We won a title. I am forever going to love the city of Milwaukee. I will always consider myself to be a Milwaukee Buck. But let's be real about this situation. I want to play for championships, and this organization is not anywhere near playing for championships. Can you trade me? Until Giannis says that, I don't think the Bucks should have any reason to want to trade him. Now he could say that, and if that does happen, the Bucks would then be able to reset their franchise. But players like Giannis don't come around very frequently. The Bucks went 50 years between them, and who knows how long it would be before the next one. So I don't think that they will ever get to the point where it's like, you know, we really want to trade Giannis. But the more likely situation, I think, is Giannis gets to a point and says, man, I really want to win another championship, and I don't see it happening in Milwaukee.
For sure. So another move that happened this time in the Western Conference and with a couple teams, Denver Nuggets recently they traded Michael Porter Jr. and an unprotected 2032 pick to the Brooklyn Nets for Cam Johnson. And then the Houston Rockets made a move to acquire Kevin Durant. They traded away Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, this year's number 10 pick, and 5 second rounders. Out of those two big moves that happened, which of the two Western Conference teams do you think benefited the most or could benefit the most from this?
Oh, I like the way you worded that because I think it changes the answer. I think that the Denver Nuggets will benefit the most from that, but I think the Houston Rockets made the better trade, if that makes sense. Like, because I look at this and say, Denver has the guy who, in my opinion, Nikola Jokic is the best player in basketball. He is the greatest basketball player that is currently at the peak of his powers. And when you have that, you have the opportunity to win a title. And I think Cam Johnson will be a better fit than Michael Porter Jr. was. And I think that shedding Michael Porter Jr.'s salary the way that the Nuggets were able to has allowed them to make some other moves on the margins, such as trading for Jonas Valanciunas, which I think is a great move for them. Being able to sign Tim Hardaway Jr., which I think will be a good move for them. Bruce Brown returning to Denver, which will be a good move for them. I think they're having a fantastic offseason. And I think that they're in a position, they are better equipped right now to win a title than they were 2 months ago. And when you have the best player in the world, that's how I think you have to approach these things. Houston, I think, made the better trade. I think and to be clear here, I think Houston has had an outstanding offseason. I love almost everything that they've done so far in this free agency period. But I look at this and say, well, I still think that right now Denver is closer to winning a title. So I lean towards that move just being more impactful this year. But for Houston, being able to acquire Kevin Durant, even if he is 37 years old at this, he's still really good. For Jalen Green, who is somebody that maybe you guys have a different opinion on him as a basketball player, I think he's like a sixth man or just a
Right.
good player on a bad team type of guy. And, you know, there is space for that in the league, but he is not somebody that I think is a championship player. Dylan Brooks is fine. I think that he helped establish a culture in Houston, but he's not some irreplaceable player. They gave up one draft pick, which ultimately was Phoenix's draft pick, giving it back to them while hanging on to several other draft picks that they have for or from Phoenix. So they still control parts of Phoenix's draft and they give up 5 second round picks. Like, who cares? That's not a big deal. I think that there are some teams that would rather just not have second round picks. And I think that that trade was the better trade. But I think Denver, given what the roster previously looked like and just where they're at in their team building cycle, is better equipped to benefit from the move they made, if that makes sense.
Yeah, when that move came out of the Rockets make trading for Kevin Durant, I thought, okay, I'm gonna hear the name Jabari Smith involved in this deal, or maybe Fred VanVleet in this deal. I didn't think Sengun or uh, Thompson would be a part of it. So I was surprised that Jabari Smith they were able to keep, and then also Cam Whitmore I thought was a potential name they could throw in. So yeah, I agree with you that uh, the Rockets what they gave up was not as much as I thought. But another big talking point that's been going on. So even though you are a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I'm a Boston Celtics fan, and uh, they've been affected by the new CBA that's been taking place with the second apron rule that happened last offseason, and it's impacted a lot of the roster construction, having to avoid that second apron. The Celtics are currently one of those teams that's being affected by it now, but there's other teams maybe next year down the road 2 or 3 years, unless the CBA changes, this second apron rule is going to be a big factor. What's your thoughts on this new CBA and how it could affect teams from a championship building standpoint?
It's going to come for everybody. It is. What Boston and say Boston had won the title this year, I don't know if they would have broken down the team in the same way. I think Jason Tatum's Achilles injury made it easier for the Celtics to go on and do that. But I do think it's going to come for everybody. If they came up short, and I don't think even if Tatum stayed healthy, I don't think that Celtics team was going to win the title. I would have picked Oklahoma City over them. And looking at it, like they would have had to make these moves anyways because it is too much money to pay. And teams do not want to be in that second apron for more than 2 years because that's when you start to incur non-financial penalties, which are like your draft pick gets thrown to the back of the line automatically. Your draft pick gets frozen. You can't trade it 7 years out. And it just really hamstrings the ability for a team to improve itself when you spend more than 2 years in that second apron. So I thought it was pretty predictable what they had to do. I don't like this. I think that this encourages the NBA, I think, has kind of contradicted itself, if you will, in their last two collective bargaining agreements, because I think this second apron is something that is put into place to encourage parity and encourage player movement. And if you think back to what was added in the CBA before this, that's when we got supermaxes because Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City to go to Golden State, and the NBA didn't like that very much. They would have preferred that Kevin Durant stayed in Oklahoma City, I believe. So they added the supermax so that teams can pay their own guys just an exorbitant amount of money more than they can get anywhere else. So that mechanism was put in. I don't remember what year that was. I think it would have been 2016, maybe was that CBA that was put in, or 2017. And then this is now something that encourages teams to be broken up. And I don't think it's a good thing for the league as a whole. I think it is. I think part of the NBA's issue right now, as somebody who covers this league every single day and talks about it every single day, I think part of the fan issue right now is fans are too attached to players and not as attached to teams. And I think that the NBA needs to get itself back in place where fans care about team success a lot. And certainly when your team is good, you care about team success. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't like players on other teams, but I think 15 years ago, and maybe this changed when LeBron left Cleveland to go to Miami. But I think that 15, 20 years ago, people weren't necessarily fans of a guy wherever he went. They were fans of a team and they became fans of a player. And you could build that fan player relationship because a guy was around for a really long time. And with these new rules, I think that they encourage teams to have to trade players. They encourage, maybe Jason Tatum is on the Celtics his entire career, but I don't think Jaylen Brown will be. And I look at Jaylen Brown as a guy that won a finals MVP for Boston. And he is somebody that I think 20 years ago, there would have been no doubt that he would have been a member of the Boston Celtics his entire career. I think with Jason Tatum, there would have been no doubt that if he wanted to, he would have been a member of the Celtics for his entire career. But these new rules make it so you kind of can't do that. You kind of can't have these high priced players on your roster forever because you can't build teams successfully around them. So you can do that, but you can't really build a winner. And I don't know that that's the best thing for the NBA.
Danny, I want to talk about the Cavs now. The Cavs recently just traded Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball, and then Ty Jerome left Cleveland to join the Memphis Grizzlies for 3 years, $28 million. What can Lonzo Ball bring to the table for the Cleveland Cavaliers?
So one of the things that I think has been the theme of the offseason for the Cavs is they want to be a team that deploys a lot of two-way players. And by that, I mean guys that are not looked at as weaknesses on offense, and they're not looked at as weaknesses on defense. They are looked at guys that, at the very least, they are a neutral offensive player or a neutral defensive player. And if so, they're a plus on the other end. Isaac Okoro was somebody who was a very good defender. He was a plus defender, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a minus on offense. If you watch the playoffs in the last 3 years, the Cavs have played in 5 series. They've played the New York Knicks, the Orlando Magic, the Boston Celtics, the Miami Heat, and the Indiana Pacers. Of those 5 teams, not a single one of them has seriously defended Isaac Okoro in the playoffs. They will leave him wide open because they don't believe he's going to make shots. So when that's the case, when that is what you have on the floor, you're playing 4-on-5, and that's not sustainable in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
Ty Jerome, on the other hand, had one magical season in Cleveland. He was awesome this year. He finished 3rd in 6th man of the year, which I thought was appropriate. I thought that if the NBA's rules were different, he would have been somebody that would have been, I think, the best possible candidate for comeback player of the year or for most improved player, I think is probably the actual name of the award I'm speaking about here. So I do think that that's the type of thing that he was. But you get to the playoffs and Ty won against the Pacers, stunk offensively. It was a bad matchup for him. He did not play well. And 2, he is not a good defender. Like, he is somebody that if he is on the floor for you and he's not producing offensively, he's not providing anything for you. So I look at what they've done, adding Lonzo Ball, who there is a gigantic if with Lonzo Ball. And that gigantic if is if he stays healthy, because he has played 70 games over the last 4 seasons, which not a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
So if he stays healthy, he is somebody that is good offensively. He is good defensively as well. He is a plus on both sides of the floor. He cannot be played off the floor in the playoffs. So while that risk is there because of the injury, that is something that they want to have guys that can play on both ends. I think the same thing can be said for Larry Nance Jr., who they signed on or agreed to a contract with, on Tuesday afternoon. He's somebody that's good on both ends of the floor. Because if you look at Oklahoma City, they don't have guys that are targets defensively or that teams can just leave open all the time offensively. That's not how championship teams in 2025 are built. And that's what the Cavs are striving to be. And these moves, I do think, while I can't say that because of the giant if that's attached with Lonzo, and I think you can, even with Larry's injury history too, I think you can make the case about the whole if belonging to him too for the injuries. But these moves, I can't say that they make the Cavs better, but they make the Cavs different in a way that I think is more conducive to postseason success and ultimately That's what matters for them.
So yeah, I want to talk about go into last season. Cavs won 64 and 18, which include a 15-0 start, and they set their franchise record with a 16-game winning streak later in the season. This was the best Cavs team post LeBron James, and unfortunately, it ended the same way as it did in the year before. And they didn't win a single. I believe they didn't win a single home game against the Pacers, including the postseason. What did Indiana do that really affected Cleveland in that series that really led to the Cavs' demise?
They played with more force than the Cavs did. If you watch that series, like what they were able to do offensively, they were the team that was more capable of getting to the spot on the floor that they wanted to be on than the Cavs were. They were able to, I think, dictate the tempo and the style that which these games were played. And that is something that is very important in postseason basketball. And of course, it did not help that the Cavs were dealing with some significant injuries. As you probably know, Darius Garland had to have a toe surgery 4 weeks after the conclusion of that series against the Pacers. Donovan Mitchell was dealing with a calf strain during that series. Evan Mobley was in a walking boot because of an ankle sprain in that series. So their three best players, to one extent or the other, were playing on one leg during that series. But the Pacers outplayed them. The Pacers outshot them. The Cavs could not make 3-pointers. Wide open, contested. It didn't matter. They didn't shoot well. And that stuff absolutely matters in that setting because for as good as the Cavs are in the regular season, the margins get tighter in the postseason. You cannot afford to shoot 25% from three in a series. You're not going to be able to beat good teams like that. So I do think that there was some bad luck involved. There was some injuries involved, but ultimately the Pacers were the team that dictated the way the series was going to be played. And more often than not, I would say 90% of the time, the team that dictates the style of the series is going to be the team that's playing in the next series too.
If the Cavs do come up short again, is this likely going to be the end of the Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen core if they come up short again next season?
I believe so. And I think it depends on what you term come up short. Like if they lose in the second round, yes. If they get to the finals and lose in 7 games, I think that's a different answer. Like I
Yeah.
just don't think it's as easy to say. I think it depends what coming up short looks like.
Yeah.
Like those two postseasons not ending with a championship parade are not created equally. I think if they don't win the Eastern Conference next year, there should be some significant changes. Because I think at that point, you will have had with that core group, you will have had 4 postseasons where they've played together, and I can't say that in 2024 their loss to Boston was some failure. They were not as good as the
I
Celtics. They should not
agree.
have beat the Celtics. Like that is not something. And I feel at times as if I'm the only one saying this or the only one believing this, but I can't hold them against that. Like people say, oh, they failed in the postseason 3 straight years. I don't think they did that second year. The Knicks series, absolutely. This
Mhm.
past series against the Pacers, absolutely. So if they do come up short and say they don't make the finals next year, because as we record this, they are the odds-on favorites to win or to make the finals. Excuse me. So if they come up short of that goal, then I do think that they have to. I do think that is when they would have to make a move if they
Yeah.
don't before then.
Yeah, for sure. I think if they win the East, the core has to you keep the core, but if they don't, especially if they lose in the second round, I think you would have to break up the core and I think there's a lot. Do you think there's going to be a little bit more pressure on Donovan Mitchell next year to get to the Eastern Conference Finals since he hasn't gotten past the second round in his career thus far?
Oh, I think there's been pressure on him. I think he feels that pressure. I do think, to be fair, I think he individually thrives in that pressure. Because if you look at what he has done, I was saying to myself before, and I probably posted this on social media, and I'm sure I wrote this at my Substack too. But going into game 2 against the Pacers, where the Cavs did not have Darius Garland because of that toe injury, they did not have Evan Mobley because of the ankle injury, they did not have DeAndre Hunter because of a thumb injury. I said Donovan Mitchell needs to go out and he needs to have a LeBron James-esque superstar performance in that game. Now, obviously, I am not saying that Donovan Mitchell needs to go out and actually be LeBron James because there is only one of those guys ever, but he needed to have that type of moment
Mhm.
in order for the Cavs to win. He needed to have that type of moment where he could put the team on his back and carry them to a win when they were shorthanded and with their backs against the wall. So in that game, Donovan Mitchell, who did not shoot the ball well from outside, was just 1 of 7 from three, but finished with 48 points. He had 9 assists, 5 rebounds. He got to the line 21 times in that game. Now, it ultimately ended with Tyrese Halliburton hitting an insane buzzer beater that stole that game after the Cavs were up by 7 points with 40 seconds left to go. But there was a lot of pressure in that game, and Donovan Mitchell really showed up. There was a lot of pressure, I would argue, in game three, down 2 games to nothing in Indianapolis, and Donovan 3 points. Like he has, I think, shown that he can step up to the occasion in these games. I can't put this loss, knowing what he was fighting through physically. I can't put this loss all on him. Did he come up short? Yes. The same way that Darius Garland came up short, even though he was hurt, and Evan Mobley came up short, even though he was hurt. But I can't just say, you know what, Donovan really failed. Donovan wasn't good enough. Like, I think that this one was a little bit different.
I agree. I thought Donovan was really good in that series, especially game two and three. It was like after game four when they got blown out in Indy, it felt like it just took all the win out of them, and they were just unable to come back from that. But I like Donovan Mitchell. He's a great player. I still believe that he'll get over that hump. I just hopefully he'll be able to do that, especially in Cleveland for sure.
Yeah, I think this season coming up is going to be one that people are not going to care what the Cavs do in the regular season. And Donovan said as much immediately after the loss to the Pacers. But I think that this is one that they're going to, I think they're going to finally get over that hump next year.
Mhm.
Because if they don't next year, I don't know that they ever will.
Yeah, absolute. Yeah, absolutely. I got one more question for you, Danny, before we let you go. What is one move right now that the Cavs should prioritize that could be that missing piece or could maximize their chances of winning the East and potentially winning the championship next season?
You know, I don't know if there is one left for them. I have been a proponent of listening on Jarrett Allen trades, but I do think it's a little late in the process for that at this point. I think that that is something that might not necessarily be in the cards this offseason anymore. I think that if it would have happened, maybe it would have happened a little bit earlier, but I kind of think this roster is set as is. They are going to be, I guess the move this offseason for them is just say, hey, Evan Mobley get better again, because he got, I thought, significantly better from year three to year four that just wrapped up for him. And if he gets even better than that, then I think we're having a conversation about the Cavs being in the finals. Like, I think that the goal for the Cavs, and this is less of a goal for the Cavs specifically and more of an individual goal for Evan Mobley, but I think the goal for the Cavs is for the three of us to be having a conversation 1 year from now, and we're talking about how Evan Mobley was the best player on the Cavs this year, and that's why they got to the finals. That should be the goal, because if that does happen, if Evan Mobley is a better basketball player than Donovan Mitchell, because Donovan Mitchell's not getting worse, but Evan Mobley is getting better. So if we get to the point where we are saying Evan Mobley was a better basketball player than Donovan Mitchell this year, we will be talking about the Cavs as a team that was in the finals.
Also, hopefully next year we'll all three of us will be back on together talking about that.
I will be around.
Um, so Danny, what's your thoughts on the WNBA deciding that Cleveland is an expansion city for them?
I'm super excited about it. I think that this city is ready. I was lucky enough to cover the women's Final Four a little over a year ago when it was in Cleveland. It was Caitlin Clark's senior season at Iowa. And the city was really electric for that. And I don't think that that's going to be replicated every single night over the course of a WNBA season. I understand that is a special, significant event with a very, very special player that has generated popularity, unlike any other player I think in women's basketball has. But I do think the game is growing. I think it's a really good thing for the league, truthfully, too, because I think that this is a league that has so much talent in it right now, but doesn't have enough roster spots for its talent. So I think that Cleveland is getting in at the right time because there's so many talented women out there that just don't have a place in the WNBA because each team only has 12 roster spots, and that's not enough. But by adding more teams, I think Cleveland, just as they go through expansion and what that process looks like in a couple of years, I think that ultimately is going to be a really cool thing. I am personally very excited. We don't have a nickname. We don't know what they're going to be yet, but I'm very excited to check out the WNBA in Cleveland. I used to live in Minneapolis. Obviously, the Lynx are a really big deal up there, and they have had tremendous success throughout their franchise's history. I got to go to games there when I lived there, and it was awesome. And I'm just very excited for that to be here. I just personally, because I'm such a big fan, I wish that Paige Beckers was a freshman in college right now, so that her timeline of coming into the WNBA would line up with Cleveland getting a team. Because I would really love for her to be playing for the team in my city.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Kansas City can get one down the road. I thought Kansas City because we have the Kansas City Current, which is a very popular National Women's Soccer League franchise. I thought, oh, maybe Kansas City could be in the running for that down the road, but I guess we'll have to wait. Um, but for you, Danny, how can fans or our listeners, once they get to listen to this on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, how can they get in touch with you or just listen to your content?
Yeah, you can find me every weekday at Locked On Cavs, wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. On YouTube as well, every single day, talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. I have a Substack where I write about the team. It's called The Inside Shot. You can find that on all of my social media platforms, primarily Twitter at Real D Cunningham over there. So all my stuff for the most part is can be found any of those places.
Well, Danny. Thank you for coming on tonight on the podcast. Hopefully, we'll have you on again soon, talking about the Eastern Conference champions, Cleveland Cavaliers, in 2026. But thank you for coming on tonight.
You got it, guys. Thanks for having me.